Hi guys, finally after 2 years I managed to find some time and try to finish this tutorial. To be more precise, I'll try to put an end of it and give you a final result. I have no excuses for making you wait so long, but I jumped into several different projects and the lack of time was a constant in my life. So the time is not here, and that's the main reason that that this second part will be much shorter than the first one, and I'll try to split it into several assets that you can download it in the link below. And those assets will help you not only to build this sun, but maybe to use them in the future in different projects for totally different results. By the end of this video, I will show you some examples how to play with it. Okay, so let's start. Let's remember what we want to obtain is this image, this type of image of the sun with explosions, circular explosion based on the magnetic field of the sun, and little solar activity on the surface of the sun. Okay, so first thing first is to have a sun body. Let's call this sun. And let's drop here a sphere. That will be our sun body. And let's make this polygon mesh with a scale of 5 and more detailed geometry. Okay, so in the first part we learned how to build a magnetic field and how to generate points that will further become the poles for the magnetic fields. And now I split this into assets. So the first thing is to go into the asset libraries and install all the assets we need. So the first asset we will use is stick points to surface. What this does, it generates points that will stick on the surface of the input, of the objects from the input, and they will be animated by a noise. You already learned how to do that in the first tutorial. So those points will later on become the poles, negative and positive poles of the magnetic field of the sun. Okay, right now are too many, and out of several tries I realized that the best results came with less points. So let's say 150 should be enough. Let's simulate those. So they are moving on the surface of the sun. Now, next thing is to transform those points into magnetic poles. So for this we have another asset called magnetic field asset. That goes like this. In the first input, you can drop a bunch of points, and the algorithm inside, it will, so this is the first input. The algorithm inside will randomly assign minus or plus charges to the points. So if we put this into here, we can now visualize from the first output you can access the VDB volume, and the second output is a visualizer. Sorry. Visual magnets. Okay, so if we go here, we can see how the points become positive and negative. So of course, if we randomly redistribute the points, they will I guess this one is okay. So as long as we have curved lines over here, that means there is a big chance to have here a positive pole and here a negative pole, so the explosion will try to follow up this curved surface over here. So we will have curved explosions. Well, I guess this one is okay. We will need actually this output, the first output, which is invisible, but whatever is inside this volume is the same. The forces inside this volume are the same with the forces that we can visualize it over here. But that's the one we need. Okay, so I'll better cache this animation of the magnetic poles to add the new asset, the sun explosions. So let's drop the intensity here. Let's let's find another random distribution. Okay, let's say that this is okay. Drop the voxel size to be more precise, and cache the volume, animated volume. File cache. Let's go to let's assign a name. Let's say magnetic field dot $f4 dot VDB, and it's from 1 to 240. Save it to disk. Okay, now it's saved. Be sure that we will load it from disk. And now it's time to make the explosions. For this, I create an asset called sun explosions that you already installed. That needs two inputs. One input is the magnetic field, and the other input is the geometry, the sun geometry. So the sphere goes into the points, the stick points to surface, then generates the magnetic field, then cache it, then the explosions. The explosions are particles. They are particles which are driven by the magnetic field. The particles are scattered over the sun surface. Let's see. They are scattered like that over the sun surface. And they try to follow the curves, or they try to follow the magnetic field from here. So this is the magnetic, again, this is the visualization for the magnetic field, but the actual magnetic field is here, and we can't see him. We cache it, and we feed it into here, and the actual sphere, we feed it into here. So it's a particle system. I choose to have a particle system because it's a base for everything in Houdini, particle-wise. I mean, out of particles you can build pyro effects, you can build VDBs, you can build I don't know, isosurfaces, whatever you want. So as long as you have good particles, you will have good simulations. I choose to make an asset that generates particle in the shape of explosions. Now, all the parameters over here are dedicated to the particle setup, and the parameters over here are dedicated to the colors of the particles. You have two outputs over here. One output is actually the one we see it in the viewport over here. So the first output are the outer explosions, and the other output is the, I don't know, surface explosions, or the base of the explosions. If you want to see them together, it's like this. Let's do something to have a better idea of a better visual representation of what will be the final. Let's do a mask for the inside of the sun. I mean, let's use this sphere, create another object here, drop the sphere here and assign a color, a darker color, let's say dark red. So we have okay, just a second. Okay, so we have a simple sphere here and the particles over here, and combined together some particles and sun geo. Sorry. Okay, back to the example. We have some activity on the sun surface. We have some explosions which are curved and on the outer rim, which are those. And we have some details that we will do later on with the different assets that we have. But we need those colors. The color are based on an attribute. I choose to use two attributes, which are the age of a particle and the proximity of the particle. The age is simple, it's the age of the particle in seconds. When the particle is getting older, it will reach a color. When it's younger, it will have another color. So at the second 0, it will be white, for example, and the second 3, it will be red, for example. The range here is totally wrong, it's 30 seconds, so let's put it. So the first tab over here, big explosion color, is referred to the only to the outer rim explosions or the big explosions. So those parameters over here are dedicated to the input 1. Parameters over here are dedicated to the input 2, to this. Let's work on the first input, outer explosions. Right now they are based on age, and it's for a range between 0 seconds and 30 seconds. Let's put it on 3 seconds. So what we see here, we see that when a particle reaches the age of 3, it will get white. When the particle has the age of 0, it will be black. Usually should be vice versa. I mean, should be black when it's older because it gets colder, and it will be white when it's younger because it's hot. So let's see how this looks like if we invert all these colors. So the younger they are, the whiter they are, and when they get older, let's simulate more to have more time. As you can see here at the edge, at the border of an explosion, the explosion is getting red, and then it will fade to dark and it will disappear. So we can play with these values as we please. It is good to use the age, but I discovered that non-proximity attribute is much more close to reality. And what is non-proximity? It's the number of particles, density, let's say, of particles in dense areas. For example, if we change age with non-proximity, go back with the colors with a gradient from black to white via red. We can see that whenever we have 30 neighbors of a particle, it will be white. Whenever we have less than 30, close to 0, they will be black. Here, for example, where we can see some white and yellow, that means in this area it's more dense and we have more chances to have 30 neighbors around one particle. And for example, here at the outer rim, because they are not so dense, the particles over here, they will tend to be black. Let's say that those are the colors for the explosions, and the colors for the surface is similar. When they are dense, you can play by your, I don't know, play with it and try to find the best values. We can increase the number of neighbors or decrease the number of neighbors. Let's see, 43 neighbors. Okay, I will try to simulate this with a bigger number of particles for a better visualization of the explosions and everything, and come back after the simulation is done. Before doing this, I will try to make a cache file here, again, to cache all the particles that we simulate. Okay, so I have my simulation done, and what I see, what I did, I increased the number of particles, particle burst count to 5,000, but what I don't like necessarily is the fact that the explosions are kind of too big. Sometimes there are such a big explosion over the sun surface, but those are kind of rare, and this is not the usual activity of the sun. So they are beautiful but big, and I will love to make another simulation with smaller explosions. And to do that, we go to the velocity scale over here and decrease the velocity scale. I mean, right now it's 450, and we will try with let's say 15. Okay, so it's done. Let's see what we have. Much nicer. Let's see what so beautiful it's over here. So the scale of the explosion is smaller now, and because it's smaller, it's even better defined. For example, when an arch is growing, we can see better its shape. Okay, so those are the explosions. To have more details about that, we can increase the number of particles and reach the level of details from here. And also using a rendering with motion blur and smaller p-scale for the particles, we can really have nice results. But we still have some more activity inside the sun, and we need to do that also, like all the noise inside the surface. We have the big explosion and the big activity, and we have we have the noise from the surface. For this I use I have two versions, one which is the fastest one and looks nice, and the other one, it's one with an asset that I built called Sun Noise. No, sorry, not Sun Explosions, Sun Noise. I will show you this Sun Noise later on because this is more time expensive. But for now I will use a different version. I will show you a different version and then I will come back to the Sun Noise. Let's leave this Sun Noise over here and come back to it later. So I will use again the stick points to surface. But this time I won't stick 800, I will put something more, let's say 80,000. The reason that they are pretty far from the surface is because the P scale of each surface is big, is 0.2. So let's make a smaller P scale, 0.02. And now the points, all the points, okay, the sun surface is kind of big here, and I will make it a little bit smaller, 0.98, let's say, okay, to see all the particles. Okay, so I use my original sun sphere, and over my original sun sphere I scatter again using my asset called stick points to surface. I scattered another 80,000 points on it, and if I hit play right now, they will start to move and generate a noise. Right now the gaps are pretty big, and the reason for that is that the noise that drives the motion of the particle frequency is pretty big, I mean small. Small is big in the case of noise. So the frequency here should be bigger. Let's say 3 on all axes. And now, as you can see, the randomness of the noise, it's or not the sorry the frequency of the noise, it's much closer to the what we want, a denser activity. Now we need a color. We will use the same technique like in the sun explosions. We will use non-proximity because these particles also give you proximity. So I will drop a color. I will ramp from attribute. The attribute is non-proximity. The range is between 0 and let's say 90, no, 80 for example, and it's between black and white, but we need again red and yellow, so yellow and this is red. Oh, you know what, let's copy this. Let's copy this ramp and drop it over here. Base values, copy values and base values, and play with it. It's more dense, and to achieve this more density, we can add a trace. No, sorry, trail SOP, which will leave a trail for each particle, a trail of 4 particles. So there already are a lot of particles. Okay, maybe 2 is enough. Okay, so what we did, we used the stick point to surface to create the activity over the sun. We used the non-proximity into a ramp by attribute color SOP to add color to it. And then we multiply these particles by leaving them a trace to have that. And now we can see them together. Big explosions, surface explosions, and the sun surface. And it's getting closer to this. If we want more details into this, we can, I will show you an attribute VOP, a simple attribute VOP that add more color detail to this. So let's organize stuff over here. This is the sun sphere. All these are sun explosions. Magnetic field and sun explosions. Sun surface, detail 1, and now we will do a sun surface detail 2, and this will be the sun surface detail 3. So to do this, the next thing we need some points. So we'll scatter points over the surface of the sun, the original surface of the sun, and we will scatter a lot of points, like 150,000. Then, after the scatter, we will do a point VOP. In here, inside the point VOP, we will add a curl noise, because this type of noise looks like a curl noise. So let's drop a curl noise and expose all those parameters. This is from the position. Then from the color, we need a vector to float. To cut the color into the 3 components RGB. And we will add noise to it, like this. Then we will need a vector to float. No, float to vector, sorry. We'll take the yellow, put it here, take the sum, put it here, and then this into CD. And we have a noise. It's kind of powerful, so we need a adjustment by using a multiply constant. It's a very simple example, nothing fancy, just to add some noise. And we'll drop a little bit the intensity of this. Okay, and go into the VOP. I usually color the VOP nodes in green. Curl noise color. We expose all the parameters over here. And let's see. Let's put it 2.5. Maybe like this. Turbulence. I'll leave it to 3. We can blur it a little bit. Let's say like this. Anyway, you can play by yourself with all these parameters. and we need it animated. Right now it's static, so to animate it we just simply add a expression here like $time on X, and it will, the noise will be animated. So if you want more, it's minus $time here too. So it will, now it's going down, so let's divide, make this smaller, so slower, sorry. $time divided by 5. So we have this, and let's see how it looks like if we add this to our sun. Maybe if we increase the number of points here to 5. Okay, this is kind of powerful. The color over here, the noise over here is kind of powerful, and I don't like it so much. So let's drop it a little bit. Make it a little bit darker, just in the background. It's a matter of taste anyway, so if you like it, use it. If you don't, you don't. I kind of like it more like this. This one is anyway. Anyway, just a simple ad. I'm not very sure about this solution, so but I was keen to show it to you. You can play with it and see what's happening. Now, the sun noise is the most time expensive one. You also have the sphere. You plug the sphere in, you click over here, and you wait. Okay, after waiting, this is what we have. Again, 2 outputs, 1 for points and 1 for lines. The lines are what we're interested in. So the lines have also the color. Unfortunately, the points don't have the color because those are not particles. This is a solver, and I don't have proximity here. In Houdini 17.5 you have a special node, for a SOAP node, that calculates proximity, but I started this tutorial in Houdini 16.5, so I want to finish in 16. So now proximity node. Okay, so basically we have a solver that calculates, wait a second, because the view is blocked, so I'll unblock the view. So I have a solver that calculates movement of the points based on the 3D volume, 3D VDB volume that contains volume VOP with the curl noise inside. And the curl noise drives the position of the points. And because it's a volume, you can have a volume trail, which is more time consuming, but this volume trail visualize velocity and give us the lines. They are animated, but because there are thousands of lines, it's hard to calculate. So it's not such a fantastic solution, but it's the closest one to the noise that I see here. It's an option. Okay, I put it into the package, so you have the, if you buy this package, you will have also this asset and use it whenever you want. If we take this and plug it into the, so let's organize things a little bit here. Sun surface detail version 1, this one is version 2, and detail version 3. So those are the outputs. If we take the line outputs and plug it, not all of them, sorry, only this one over here, we'll have something like that. The reason that I did this is because you can render this by yourself, alone, as a pass, as a separate pass, and use it in compositing software and add detail to the surface. Again, you can render this as a separate pass and use it into compositing, and also use the explosion. For the render, I don't know, I won't get into much details about the render. I will offer you a very simple solution. Let's say we have the sun geo and the sun particles. So the sun particles need a material. Let's go to material. I already built a glow material and a constant material. The glow material, it's simple. I only make the glow ramp rate to 5 and emission to 20, and the constant I leave it exactly like it is from the start. Then go to objects, go to sun, put here the material of glow, and make a camera. Sorry. Let's pick this one, for example. This one is nicer. Okay, so if you want to render this, look to camera, go to render view, standard IPR, and render and see how it looks like. They are huge. The points are huge. That's because they don't have p-scale. Either you go here and add a wrangle and say f at p-scale equals 0.02, for example, and render again. But the best is to go into the sun particles and at geometry point scale put it 0.02, for example. Let's see. Too small. Actually, it wasn't too small. I think it's a different problem. So the issue is like this. Here, if you render this, we can see the explosions, and the size of the point is controlled by the point scale over here. So let's put it 2.5, so the points get bigger. If you put 0.1, the points are even bigger. I will go for 0.3, for example. Oh, sorry, 0.03, sorry. And those are the explosions, because these are the explosion points. What about the trail points, the detail version 1 points? There again, they are smaller, and that's because we have a point scale here already. So we should delete the point scale. Make an attribute delete. There is no P scale. Yes. So attribute delete, point attributes P scale. We write here down P scale, and now if we render them together, we can also see the explosions and the sun surface. We need some motion blur. So the best motion blur over here is the geometry in sun particles object. We go to the sampling and geometry velocity blur, and you start add motion blur based on the velocity. If the velocity is too small, we just make a attribute wrangle. To see it better, let's go to the camera and render a bigger resolution. It's kind of fast. And now we go to the sun particles and write this down. V at V, vector at V equal V at V multiplied by 2, for example. And now the motion blur is 2 times faster. And as you can see, the trace is longer. And if you render them together, the explosions have a bigger motion blur because we told them in the wrangle velocity. So the explosions have more motion blur because we told them so. And if we have also motion blur on the sun activity, we can add a wrangle also here. See how this looks like. I'm not such a big specialist in render, so I'm sure that you guys have tons of solutions to render this much better than I do. So just take these particles and do whatever you want with them. Let's put for the sun geo, put the other material, the constant. So don't have this reflection over here anymore. And of course you can render them at passes and I don't know, play with them in Nuke or After Effects or whatever software you want. I wanted to show, before closing this, I want to show you the flexibility of those, of having those assets. Like, for example, instead of putting a sphere into all this, let's transform an object into a sun, or just get crazy with the sun solutions. Let's take the, of course, the pig head, the classic pig head over here. So we have the pig head, okay? Cool. Now the sun, the sphere of the sun is much bigger than the pig head. So let's make the pig head bigger. Now it's close to the same size. It's not necessary to do this, but to don't change the parameters in our assets, let's just make the pig head bigger. So take the pig head, don't use a shader for the pig head. Usually the pig head comes with a shader, but we don't need a shader because we put our shaders. We only need the geometry, and plug the pig head into here, then plug it into here, because this is the only two solutions that we want. Let's remember that we file cache everything. So first we go here and save it to disk. So we file cache the VDB volume right now. Okay, so we cached our magnetic field for the pig if you want to see it, it's like this. The points are scattered over the pig, and the magnetic field try to follow the pig shape, as you can see. Then we plug the pig also into the sun explosion asset, into the geometry here, and we have the explosions over the pig. Let's cache this. The simulation is done, and that's what we have. If we merge it with this, we need to reset the simulation for these points. Those are pretty fast to simulate. Let's just simulate those first. The detailed ones. Now it's done. And together we have a thermonuclear pig that is a sun and have explosions. Oh, the file cache didn't cook totally. I remain without disk space, and that's why. But you got the basic idea. Let's see how it looks like with the mask. Yeah, so the assets are pretty flexible. They could be applied on every type of objects you want, and you can transform everything into a sun like surface with explosions and solar activity, and that's about it. So let's see how this looks like in render. So now we have a pig in flames. Anyway, that's about it. Sorry for not being maybe so clear like the last time, but that was one of the reasons that it take me so long to finish this, is because for the first tutorial I edit more than I record. It was I'm not so good at explaining stuff, so for this time I just make it from one shot, and I'm not sure that I managed to be so clear to you guys. Hopefully you understood everything, and if you have questions, write them down below into the video on Vimeo, and I will answer it and try to provide you with assistance with every problems you'll have. You guys can use these assets to do whatever you want. So again, stick points to surface can be used to generate poles, or can be used to generate I don't know, noisy type of surfaces. Magnetic field could be used in anything to generate magnetic fields that you can use them to drive particles, or to drive objects, or to drive pyrofields, or to drive whatever needs a velocity and acceleration. And sun explosions is an asset that is more or less specific to the sun tutorial. For example, one last thing. For example, in the case of the pig, the sun explosions have a system that separates the big explosions from the surface explosions, as you already saw. Let me show you. Okay, so what's happening here? Out of the pop net, I have all the explosions for the pig. Then I use a sphere because this asset is specific for the sun. I use a sphere to isolate the big explosions for the small explosions. But because this pig is not a symmetric object and it's a asymmetrical object, the sphere, it won't work. So the result is that instead of cutting the sphere, instead of cutting the big explosion from small explosions, it cuts whatever goes out of the sphere. So when you use a custom object like the pig, for example, or whatever, a face, a human, be sure to put together those two outputs, outer explosion and surface explosion, in the same merge, to be sure that you will see all the particles. Anyway, you open your assets and explore them by yourself and modify whatever you want inside them. Okay, so that's about it. Thank you for watching. Sorry again for being late. Sorry again if I confuse you with this. Thank you and see you maybe next time. Bye.